afternoon, Mariama. How are you?
I'm good, Freddie. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for this interview.
Anytime, anytime,
I
anytime.
have admired your work for a long, long time. Your
Really?
companies, yes, your presentations. So please tell
Mhm.
the audience what you do for our community.
My job in the community for the last maybe 36, 37 years is teaching and promoting and exposing traditional African cultures. I chose that path in life because I always knew there were untold stories of our people. And so I wanted to put those stories on stage and bring them to life. And so I do a lot of in-depth studying with different people from the continent, studying those stories, and then bringing those stories to life on the stage.
And one thing about your work is that you have a children's section, Kulu,
Yes,
as well as an
yes,
adult company. And
yes.
that makes you stand out even more.
You think?
Yes, I don't. Is there another children's African company in the city?
I don't know. I don't know.
Not. It
I,
doesn't have the longevity. If there's one, it hasn't existed as long as yours.
I never looked at it as standing out, I guess, because I love what I do, and I love teaching people the different lessons, the different exposures that I've had in African drumming and dancing, including the children. So I guess I never looked at it as something that was different. I just do it. I just love doing it. I just love it.
I'm wondering now that we're talking about what makes your work stand out, is that maybe why you were selected as a living legend a couple of years ago by the Southern University of New Orleans? Can you talk about that honor?
I think that and the work that I've done in the community from the age of 14 years old, being the youngest female member of the New Orleans chapter of the Black Panther Party, and people wondered at 14 years old, that's where your mind was, and that's what you were doing. Yes, but I grew up in that type of home. I grew up in the civil rights home, with my dad being one of the catalysts, along with Dr. King, putting together the Southern Christian Leadership Conference here. So my dad and I had the same fight. We just had different venues that we traveled, kind of, sort of. You know what I mean?
Yes,
Of course, you know as well as I know that it was a lot of misperceptions about the Black Panther Party being violent and all of this kind of stuff. And that really wasn't true, but people played on the, the misperceptions about it. So I grew up in that type of neighborhood, in that type of home, and I just carried it through my life. I still do it.
yes,
Like with
you're
Kulu,
right.
I don't get paid. I don't get paid for Kulu. I'm not on salary for Kulu, not at all. I do it from the love and the goodness of my heart, and really wanting people to, number one, understand that they're African American people and that we're beautiful people and that we have stories that have not been told. And these stories are stories that you're not going to learn in a history book, but I grant people the opportunity to be able to study with master drummers and dancers from the continent and have that opportunity to ask them any questions that you may have.
Yes. Can you say your dad's name? Because we didn't get his name and we want to know that and honor him in that
My
way.
dad's name is Ernest Butch Curry. He graduated from Tuskegee in journalism, and he got his master's from Lincoln University in journalism. And so as a little girl, my dad used to be on WBOK as a newscaster. And also he wrote for the Pittsburgh Courier, because at that time, the newspapers, the Times-Picayune, and all these people were not hiring African-American journalists. And so my dad used to write for the Pittsburgh Courier. He was a writer, he was a journalist.
It's wonderful. I could see how you grew up in the movement and the influence that you would have gotten. That's wonderful. How does your work in the community with your dance companies, with your activism with the Black Panther Party. How does that relate to, or how has the legacy and history of Congo Square influenced your work?
Congo Square is a very historical place. Congo Square holds a lot of history of our people. Congo Square is where you had different people from different ethnic groups gather on a Sunday. And so learning those different ethnic groups, learning about those different ethnic groups ties into the history of Congo Square as well as New Orleans, because you know as well as I know, New Orleans had one of the largest slave ports in this country. And so the slaves were brought in through the ports of New Orleans, and a lot of people don't know that. And so it has a very, very deep, rich history about our people. So it all worked together. Congo Square, African drumming and dancing, knowing who you are, knowing from whence you came, knowing the struggle, it all works together. It's all a cycle that continues to go around and around and around and around. What I think is really important is that more people, particularly African-American people, need to know that history. They need to know that, starting from the children. And so with Kulu, the Children's African Dance Company, that's where I start. I start with the children, teaching them about places like Congo Square and why Congo Square was there and how did Congo Square come about and who was in Congo Square. And this particular dance was done in Congo Square because in Congo Square, you had Manding people. They were there, and this is what the Manding people do. And this is some of the language. So it's all a cycle that needs to continue on the educational piece that is very important for our people.
You've already touched on my third question, which is about connections. So I know that you've studied extensively. You even mentioned some of the research that you've done. What connections come to your mind when you think about Congo Square and the cultural practices that were perpetuated there and other parts of the diaspora, whether it's a country in Africa or someplace else? What connections come to your mind?
There's so many connections. One really important connection is the fact that I'm able to reconnect. I'm able to talk to my people, those who were born on the continent, being able to connect with them and talk to them and ask them questions about different things. We have all kind of really serious conversations about different things like the slave trade or the door of no return. We have all kind of serious conversations about that. And so they understand how we feel on this side of the continent, and we understand how they feel on that side of the continent. And so being able to talk to each other and being able to have that connection is really important, because now you have an understanding of what happened and what was going on and what needs to happen. The other serious connection for me is again, being able to teach the youth about what Congo Square was. How did we arrive here? And as you said earlier, the diaspora. I just did a Haitian piece with some children at school, and we talked about the diaspora. First of all, they didn't know what diaspora meant. Second of all, they didn't know about the diaspora and what a diaspora was. And so I broke it down to them. In my dance class, I touch on social studies, I touch on history, I touch on science, I touch on math, I touch on a whole lot of stuff, geography. We're talking about the map. Can you go to the map and show me Guinea-Bissau? Show me how you can read this map. So the educational piece is very, very important, and being able to tie all of that in with people and teaching people, particularly the children. The other part is, once again, just the historical aspect of us as a people and what we went through and how did we go through it. And we talk about the slave trade, but even after the slave trade, it was so horrendous, the things that were done to our people, simply because we were Africans born in this country, or we were Africans that came to this country. And European people didn't like us, or they didn't feel like we were human. Just even talking about that and reconnecting that and getting a lot of people, not just the children, understanding that serious historic aspect of that. It's a very serious, historic aspect. And now we're talking about critical race theory, where you don't want the truth to be told. No, it has to be told. It did happen. It happened. And in some cases, it's still happening.
Yes. Oh, the after effects are still happening.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That's wonderful. I want to revisit something that you mentioned, because many of our viewers may not have seen or may never get to hear from a member of the Black Panther Party. And you said that there were so many negative connotations now. Can you please share with the audience some positive things, or some things that you did and why you were a member, what it meant to you, so that we can broaden their perspective of the Black Panther movement?
As a young girl growing up in the Hyder Grove section of New Orleans, that's where I grew up at. And, you're in the neighborhood and you're riding your bike and you're skating up and down the street. And, we had this one little place on the corner where, a lot of the young brothers would gather and they'd just stand around. And then seeing a policeman come, and vamp down on them and throw them up against the wall and harass them. I saw that with my own two eyes for no reason, because you're outside and you're playing and you're jumping rope and you're shooting marbles and you're riding a bike. Those are the kinds of things that we used to do. So we were outside children. And so seeing that happen, I never could understand why that was happening. Also, my first encounter with African-American history, other than my dad and my family, was in the 5th grade with a teacher by the name of Miss Dorothy Moore, who started teaching us about Harriet Tubman and Mary McLeod Bethune and Nat Turner. So I would go home and tell my dad, "Oh, Daddy, we learned about this, that, and he'd be like, "Well, do your research, is more." So that became my world, wanting to know who my people were and the things that my people did. Going into the Black Panther Party, I knew that it was a struggle for protection of the Black community. It was a struggle for protection of Black men and women in the community. I knew that. I also knew that the pie was not cut evenly. And so joining the Black Panther Party, we had political education classes where we studied different books and we broke the books down. I love that. I enjoyed that. I love the fact of getting up in the morning, serving kids with the free breakfast program. I was in the 9th grade. I would get up 5 o'clock in the morning and I would go serve breakfast and then go to school, because that was a part of who we were, making sure that these children had something to eat on their way to school. So a lot of things that we did, because the media portrayed us so negatively, people don't know the things that we created, like the free breakfast program. It was not the US government that created that program. It was the Black Panther Party. It was Bobby Seale and Huey Newton that created that program out of St. Augustine's Church in Oakland, California. It was us who created free clothing giveaways. It was us who created free medical attention for the elderly and the poor in areas. It was us who created transportation for the elderly to get back and forth to places that they needed to go. So because the US government, I'm saying the US government, but because the US government had this thing against us, those things were downplayed. And so the portrayal of us wearing Black leather jackets and carrying guns outstood everything that we did. And all we simply said was that we have the right to bear arms like anybody else. It's in the Constitution. We have that right, right? And so we said, okay, we're born in this country. We're Americans. We have the right to bear arms as well. We have the right to watch what's going on in our neighborhoods. We were the first ones that started Neighborhood Watch, because we would watch what was going on in the neighborhood and making sure that nothing negative was happening in the neighborhoods. We were the first ones that started that. But those things were not talked about. Those things are still not talked about because of the negativity that the United States government put on us. And people, I don't want to make a general statement, but most people at that time believed the government more than they believed in what it was that we were doing.
Wow. Thank you so much. You have given us 2 lessons during this interview. That was awesome.
Yeah. The movie Judas and the Black Messiah. You saw that movie?
No, I don't see a lot of movies.
You have to watch that movie. You have to watch that movie.
I have to write it
That
down.
movie tells a story that is really, really true. It's about the murder of Fred Hampton. It's called Judas and the Black Messiah.
Okay. I wrote it down.
It's good. It's really good.
Thank you so much for this interview. You really enlightened us. I really appreciate your time, your information, your knowledge, and what you do for the community.
Anytime. My heart warms so much when I see people performing African dance, especially the children. I'm like, yes, yes. You know, because people think we're the Ugum Boogum people jumping around on the stage. No, that's not how it's not like that.
That's right. And the work that you've put into it to prepare yourself and to prepare them really shows. So thank you. And the costume,
I love it.
You know, the costumes that you bring and the showmanship that you put in it. It's just fabulous.
You know, the costumes is all a part of telling that story. Like when I'm learning a dance, the first question I ask is, what's the song? And what does this song mean? And so, okay, so now what's the costume? What do the women wear? What do the men wear? Because my representation is very important to me because, again, people have this negative outlook versus looking at the beauty of it, of what it is that we do. You know what I mean? Like the Manding people and the Jola people are not the same people. You know, the Wolof people and the Sede are not the same people. But people don't realize that there's differences. You know, they want to clump them all together. No, they're very different. And so this is what the Jola women wear. And this is what the Sede women wear. You know, the women from Guinea wear this. And the women from Sierra Leone wear this. It is a huge difference. And so for me, it's a part of education, teaching people the differences about our people, you know.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Thank you. You do it
You're
so
welcome.
beautifully.